Hey everybody, today is January 11th. I'm Mr. Sheridan. This is Zoology. We are going to go over a quick presentation today that is going to cover some information about how we actually define agriculture and how when we talk about, we are going to use the acronym AFNR as we move through this unit, which stands for agriculture, food, and natural resources. So when you hear that term AFNR, Michigan State University is certainly going to use that as well. So you will be able to, so you'll understand what that means. To get started, we're going to run through a presentation today that is going to cover just some information on what exactly agriculture is. For those of you who have been in ag classes before, some of this is going to be review, but there is some good information in here about some of the numbers and what exactly it means when we talk about agriculture in general. So for those of you who are just joining us, I'm glad that you're here. Please jump into your Google Classroom and open up that quiz. You're going to be able to answer all of those questions as we go through this presentation. So as I get ready to share my screen here. So let's talk about how we actually define agriculture. We're going to talk about a number of different parts of the industry today. Okay, I'm getting a couple of messages that I don't have that the quiz isn't opening. If you open it up for whatever reason and you can't type in it, you may need to make your own copy. You may need to go to File and make a copy, and then you'll have your own that's in your drive that then you can turn in at the end of this. Maybe a way that you can get around some issues with being able to write in that quiz. And there we go. Okay. So this is what we're going to do during this presentation. We're going to define agriculture and the components of the agricultural industry. And I apologize, I am going to be reading a lot of this material. Not typically my favorite presentation style. Most of the time when we're making presentations, the idea would be that we would have some information on the screen and you all are intelligent adults that can read. So I'm not just going to read that information to you, but this is a presentation that I did not put together and there's a bunch of good stuff in there. So a lot of it I am just going to kind of read through so that we can cover it. And it's also a lot of it's going to be on your quiz. So not an ideal way to present, but in this particular case, it's a lot of good information that we're going to try to get to you. And for those of you who are watching the recording, you can buzz through this relatively quickly. So we're also going to explain the scope of both American and Michigan agriculture as it relates to land use, economic, and employment. So there's a few different ways that we measure how big the ag industry is, and we're going to talk about those. And we're going to talk about the important contributions that agriculture makes to all of our daily lives. Words that you're going to need to know. There's a few in here that are going to cause some that maybe you haven't seen before. I imagine a lot of this is going to be review, but particularly arable land and fiber, maybe things that we don't know, but we're going to buzz through all of those and get those words as a part of our vocabulary moving forward. So when you think of agriculture, I imagine that a lot of you, your first thought is going to go to somewhere related to this picture, this very picturesque scene of an older barn, cattle in the background, stacks of hay bales along a fence row, very typical of what people think of when they come to agriculture. This may be very different for some of you. For those of you who haven't traveled a lot outside of Michigan, these are Bos Indicus type cattle or Brahman cattle and it's really interesting to see this many in a feedlot. You'll notice that in the background, there are several that have some awfully big horns, but a very interesting and different picture of agriculture than what we are typically used to here in Michigan. So let's start with the definition. Agriculture is the art, science, and business of cultivating plants, animals, and other life forms for use by humans to sustain life. So it's growing living things in order to provide food and other things that we need as humans. And this presentation is available for all of you. So if you want to just buzz through these, you can do that. If you want to it also gives you the opportunity to go back through these if I'm going too fast on some of these slides. So what is the scope of American agriculture? And these are the three things that we talked about: how much land is being used for agriculture, how much money is being generated by agricultural industries, and the total number of people employed by the ag industry. So when we talk about land use, we know that 3/4 of the Earth's surface is covered in water, which allows for our environmental equilibrium, which is a good thing. And it is estimated that half of the remaining quarter, so 1/8 of the Earth's surface, is used for some type of agriculture. So this would include, everything from our national parks and rainforests to cattle pastures to cropland and all those sorts of things. So we've got 1/8 of the land is being used for agriculture in some way, shape, or form. Now that would be different than the arable land, because arable land would be ground that can be used for growing crops. So we took that 1/8 that is available for some type of agriculture, and then we can narrow that down, and only 1/4 of that is available as actual arable land that would be land acceptable to be able to grow crops on. And because there is so much development with populations rising everywhere around the world, we are in danger of losing more and more of that ground that is arable in order to be used for agriculture. So it's important that we're managing that ground properly, and that we are that we're using it in the way that we need to continue the agricultural industry as we know it. Going to need to know some of these numbers for your quiz that you should all be writing on right now. There's a multiple choice question down there. I'm going to cover a few of these things.
I can't find the quiz.
What's that, Harrison?
I can't find the quiz on Classroom.
Okay, it's under week 20, so it's right at the top of your classwork section. Under week 20, and it's the only assignment in there. There's 2 documents, there's 2 attachments to that assignment. One is the presentation and the other is the quiz.
Okay.
Take a look. If you're still struggling after this is over, then I'll help you find it. But
Okay,
you're going to want to go through and double check some of these numbers. So ag is accounts for approximately 10% of all the money spent on trade worldwide. $7.2 trillion in agricultural goods are sold each year. This is around the world. The economic influence of agriculture varies by country. American agriculture accounts for more than $775 billion in sales annually, and American agriculture exports $140 billion annually. So if we do a little bit of math there, there's going to be somewhere around $635 billion of agricultural products that are sold within our country. Employment, 1 in 5 jobs in the United States is somehow connected to agriculture. So if you're curious why we're going through this in a career readiness type situation or unit, here's why. Because there's a ton of jobs available in the agricultural industry, from everything from working on farms and vet clinics and working with animals to, this looks like we're in some sort of a lab situation. This other picture, working on genetics or plant propagation of some kind. And there are more than 22 million people in the United States employed in the agricultural industry. So this is one of those definitions that we talked about. A commodity is a raw material that can be bought and sold. Examples of commodities are corn, wheat, cows, tomatoes, etc. And agriculture is driven by 3 main commodity areas, and we're going to talk about all 3 of these: food, fiber, and natural resources. Food includes all materials and substances used for human consumption. It's the stuff we put in our mouths. Food production includes the growing, harvesting, processing, distribution, marketing, and sales of all products used for human consumption. Whole lot of examples down here, all included in the food category or the food area of agriculture. A fiber, this is going to be a little different than what we typically think of. A fiber is a product with long, thin components used to create woven or composite materials. So not only can this be cotton or wool that's grown to make clothing, which is, I imagine, what we think of when we think of fibers, something long and thin that we can thread together to make clothes and or sheets or fabric or whatever it is, but also pulpwood. It's also something that we can is actually considered a fiber. That's how we would make paper and other things where we're where we're turning those long, thin components into something that is composite. So there's a number of different areas where we would consider pulpwood and paper making and paper towels and all that good stuff. How we make those things out of paper versus natural resources, which are materials and substances that occur in nature, such as mineral, wood, water, and wildlife. So when we're thinking of fish, deer, plants, and mushrooms, they can be considered a natural resource when they occur naturally in nature. So there's different ways wherein some of those things are going to cross that line. If you are I've got someone out near me that's actually raising deer in a confined space in order to improve genetics and sell those. I imagine that they're selling bucks, around to game preserves and that sort of thing. That would fall more under, a confinement, agricultural operation rather than natural resources. But you can see where that kind of walks the line. So what commodities do you think are produced in Michigan? Let's just think about that for 10 seconds here. What types of commodities? So those things fall under our food, fiber, and natural resources. Those are all commodities. Those are the three areas of commodities. What do we produce in Michigan? So the answer is a whole bunch of them. Michigan is a major producer of a lot of different commodities, from everything from sugar and cherries to eggs and blueberries to plants and flowers. We grow an awful lot of stuff here, and it's because of our unique environment, because we're surrounded by the lakes here. So the only state that produces more commodities than Michigan is California. So we are second in the country in terms of the types of commodities that we produce here in Michigan. And we contribute $101.2 billion annually to the state's economy. And there are 10 million acres of farmland in Michigan. Going to need to know that first one. If you haven't found that question on the quiz, I want to fast forward a little bit because that one's on there. Michigan's food and agricultural industry employs more than 923,000 Michiganders and is about 22% of the state's employment. So when we're talking about jobs that are available in the agricultural industry, these folks that are working in this food processing plant, they count. So that's why we're trying to cover a lot of this different stuff so that we can try to give you some opportunities to look out for careers in the ag industry. So how do we interact with agriculture? Can be in one of two different ways. We can either be a producer or a consumer. So, trick question here, because we're all consumers, because we need food to survive. So we're all going to be consumers in some way. But I imagine that there's a number of you who are in the class that are already considered producers, and some that may be on that path as well. Why is agriculture important to our daily lives? Well, because we use it every day, because we eat every day, we wear clothing every day, and there's other examples of things that we use every single day that are related to agriculture. So in 1776, when our country was founded, 90% of the population lived or worked on a farm, and today only 1.8% of the population is on an active farm. So we do have, but there are 22 million people that are employed by the agricultural industry. Agriculture provides us with resources that we might not recognize are connected to agriculture. So things that and some of us have talked about in our natural resources class, things like lumber, but also paints, brushes, and hand tools, fuel, antifreeze. All of these things are all examples of things that are produced by products and or companies that are involved in the agricultural industry. So something that we can look out for when we think of agriculture sometimes. These are all examples of products that are connected to agriculture. So it's clearly just more than just about, the row crop farms that you drive past on your way to school every day. And obviously we're all affected by agriculture, and we need our farmers out there and our people in the ag industry that are making those products so that we can survive. So that is the end of our presentation. I hope that you were all able to fill out your quiz as we went through it. And for those of you who are not in class today, you're welcome to watch that instructional video, and you should be able to get through everything. If you have other questions, please let me know. Other than that, have a wonderful day, and I will see you all back here again tomorrow.